wait for few minutes to others to join. Please ask them to join quickly. Shall we start? So I have okay. So I have actually halfway done the reducing the project duration. So we have crashed A by 1 day. Am I right? Huh? Basically, in reducing the project duration, when you are taking like this example, first you have to draw your project network. And after drawing your project network, you have to find what are the paths. According to this project network, we are having 3 paths. The one path is A, B, E, G. The second path is A, C, F, G. And the third path is A, D, F, G. Right? So I have mentioned all these 3 paths here. After writing this 3 path, you have to write down your activities in the vertical, right? After writing down the activities in vertical, you can write down the normal time as well, right? After writing down normal time, it would be easier for you to take the normal time to your path. So for the first part, A, B, E, G, I have taken the summation. For the A, 3, 6 for the B, E for the 8, and G for the 6. And I have taken the total duration, which is in black color. For each of these 3 paths, I have taken the total duration. So after taking the total duration, we have find out ABFG is the critical path, which is having the highest duration. For that critical path, I have highlighted the activities, maximum crash time, and the cost law, right? So after highlighting that critical path activity, what is you have to do next? You have to see whether we are having the maximum crash time of 0. දැන් අපි පුතේ මේ paths ටික ඔක්කොම identify කරලා critical path එක හොයාගත්තා. critical path එක හොයාගත්තට පස්සේ critical path ටිකේ activity එකයි crash time එකයි cost slope එකයි අපි highlight කරනවා. Right? So then after what you have to do? So you have to see the maximum crash time. So if the maximum crash time is 0 means we cannot reduce that activity. The maximum crash time එක 0 තියෙනවා කියන්නේ පුතේ ඒ activity එක reduce කරන්න බෑ. Right? So මේ මෙතන ඉන්නේ කලින් හිටපු කට්ටියම නේද? So what I am explaining here, can you understand? මං කියනේව මතකයි නේද? Only Diane is responding. What about others? Aisha is also telling that yes. Right, Kavindi. Right. So first you have to say whether they are having a maximum crash time. Right. I think there are some students who did not go through the previous lecture. So if you are taking this reducing, so I am starting from beginning, right? When you are taking a reducing project duration like this question, first of all, you have to draw your project network, right? Then after drawing your project network, you have to see what are the paths that you can go. So according to this project network, there are 3 paths. And I have written down all these 3 paths, right? So after writing down all these 3 paths, I am taking the total duration. So the total duration, which is in black color, is denoted for the total duration, right? So after taking the total duration, you have to find out what? You have to find out the critical path, the duration which is having a highest. So the critical path is ADFG. So therefore, I have highlighted ADFG in yellow. So you have to highlight your activity, maximum crash time, and cost law, right? So after drawing this project network, you have to find out the maximum crash time. So maximum crash time you can find out by taking your normal time. From your normal time, you have to deduct the crash time. From normal time for the activity is 3, deducting crash time of 2 means the maximum crash time is 1. So these things are in black color, right? So likewise, you have to find out maximum crash time for all of these activities. So the next step is finding out cost law. So the cost law finding is can be done using this equation. So from the crash cost, you have to deduct the normal cost and divide it by the maximum crash time, or you can simply take normal time minus crash time. So this is the way you have to calculate the cost law. So now we have identified what are the critical paths according to this project network. And I have highlighted the activity, maximum crash time, and cost law. So this is the first step that you have to do when we are reducing the project duration, right? ඊට පස්සේ the next step එක තමයි දැන් අපි බලන්න ඕනේ maximum crash time එක 0 තියෙන්නේ මොනවද? maximum crash time එක 0 තියෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ මේ critical activity එකෙන් ඒ activity එක තව දුරටත් අපිට reduce කරන්න බෑ. So what activity having the maximum crash time of 0? So we have highlighted what? G, very good. So the we have highlighted the critical path activity, and maximum crash time is 0 is having for the G activity. That means we cannot crash that activity further. Therefore, we are crossing. So I am highlighting this thing in red color. So better to cross in your paper, you can cross this G activity. That means we cannot reduce this G activity further. right? So I have put down the critical path ADFG and 25 days are there. And we have to, after reducing this project duration, the aim of us is to reduce our, identify the cost as well. So when you are getting the cost and time, please remember that you have to take the normal. You have to take all this normal thing, right? You have to take the normal time when you are drawing your project network, and you have to take the normal cost when you are calculating the cost for the project. So therefore, you have to take the summation of the normal cost. After taking the summation of normal cost, the critical path is this, and for 25 days, and the cost is 450. So we have now find out the G activity cannot be crash because the maximum crash time is 0. So then after we are having ADF, other other critical path activity. Among that other critical path activity, you can see the maximum crash time is 1, 4 and 1. So the next step is finding out the lesser cost slope. දැන් අපි මුලින්ම බලනවා maximum crash time එක 0 තියෙන activities තියෙනවා නම් අපි ඒක කපනවා. Then we have cross the G activity. So the next step is going for the lowest cost slope. So which activity is having the lowest cost slope among the critical path activities? මේ critical path activity ටිකේ පුතේ cost slope එක අඩුවෙන්ම තියෙන activity එක මොකක්ද? ඒක තමයි ඊළඟ එක. A activity. Very good. So the cost slope is 20, 25 and 30. Very good. So among that 20, 25 and 30, the cost slope is having the minimum cost slope having is 20. And after seeing that cost slope, I will see how much of maximum crash time is there. So for the activity A, the maximum crash time is 1. That means we can reduce that activity A by 1 day, right? So I am going to crash A by 1 day. I am going to crash activity A by 1 day. So when I am going to crash activity A by 1 day means this should be cross and write down 0, right? මම මේක Excel එකේ පුතේ මට cross කරන්න ගියාම අමාරු හින්දා මම එහෙම cross කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. මේ මම වෙන color එකකින් 0 දැම්මා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ cross කරලම 0 තියන්න. So when we are crashing the activity A by 1 day means the maximum crash time now it becomes 0 for the activity A. That means we cannot crash the activity A further. Therefore, we have to cut the activity A as well. So I am cutting the activity A as well. Then activity A එකත් පුතේ තව දුරටත් crash කරන්න බෑ එක activity එක දවසකින් crash කරාට පස්සේ. ඒකින්ද activity A එකත් මම කැපුවා. So crash A by 1 activity. So when you are crashing A by 1 activity means you have to see where is the place the activity A is there. So activity A is there for the 3 paths. All these 3 paths are having. Therefore, activity එකකට normal time එක තිබ්බේ 3. එහෙනම් 3 කපලා ඔයා 2 දාන්න ඕනේ. හැම එකේම activity A තියෙන තැන් වලට 3 කපලා 2 දාන්න. So after reducing activity A by 1 day, the total duration for each of these paths also need to be changed. Therefore, the first part total duration is 23 before. Now by reducing activity A by 1 day, it should be 22. So I have doing all this second step using red color, right? And you have to do all this thing with me, otherwise you will not get the flow of this calculation, right? So for the second part, it should be 23 total duration. For the third part, the total duration is 24. We are previously have 25 duration. Now it is 24, right? දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ මෙතෙන්ට වෙනකම් කරාද? total duration වෙනකම් හෙව්වද? Please remember that I am explaining this example in detail for you, right? And I will give this other example for you to work it out as a homework, right? And I am not explaining other example in detail. මම මේ අනිත් example පුතේ එකිනෙක මේ වගේ විස්තර කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. මම ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මේක අද අප්ලෝඩ් කරනවා Excel එක. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගෙදරදී ඒ examples ටික practice කරගෙන තියන්න ඕනේ. I am just explaining මේ අනිත් example වලට මම කියන්නේ crash කරනවා මෙන්න මේ activity එක crash කරනවා එහෙම කියලා විතරයි. So in this example I am explaining step by step to get an understanding, right? දැන් අපි මෙතන total durations ටික හොයලා ඉවරයි. 22 23 24. දැන් අපි මේ total durations හෙව්වට පස්සේ පුතේ අපි ආයෙත් බලනවා මොකද්ද critical path එක. මේ රතු පාටින් තියෙන total durations වලින් බලන්න ඕනේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ ආයෙත් මොකද්ද critical path එක. So which is the critical path? මොකද්ද critical path එක වෙන්නේ? A, D, F, G. Very good. A, D, F, G. So by seeing that total duration 22, 23, 24. So the critical path is having the highest duration. That means longest duration. Very good. So it should be A, D, F, G. එහෙනම් critical path එක තාම වෙනස් වෙලා නැහැ කියන්නේ. නැහැ. හරිද? එහෙනම් තාම වෙනස් වෙලා නැත්නම් මේ අපි highlight කරපු ටිකම තමයි critical path එක. So we cannot crash the activity A. We have crossed this activity. So now we are remaining with what? Activity D and activity F. So by remaining with activity D and F, which is the activity now we are going to reduce? ඊළඟට අපි මොන activity එකද reduce කරන්න යන්නේ? Diane said it should be F. No, Diane, it's not right. It should be D activity. So, very good, D. So, දැන් අපිට පුතේ D එකයි F එකයි විතරයි තියෙන්නේ මේ critical path එකේ. හරිද? අපි A සහ G කපලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට D එකයි F එකයි අතර critical path එකේ critical activity D and F අතර අපි බලන්න ඕනේ මොකද්ද? cost slope එක අඩුවෙන්ම තියෙන්නේ මොකේද කියලා. එතකොට cost slope එක අඩුවෙන්ම තියෙන්නේ මොකේද? 25 තියෙනවා D එකට, F එකට තියෙනවා 30. cost slope එක අඩුවෙන්ම තියෙන්නේ පුතේ D activity එකට. ඒකින්ද අපි D activity එක crash කරනවා. එතකොට D activity එක crash කරනවා කියලා අපි decide කරාට පස්සේ බලනවා crash time එක කීයද කියලා. So Diane, did you get that point? Why it is not F? So දැන් අපි මේ crash කරන්නේ මොන activity එකද කියලා බලනකොට මුලින්ම බැලුවා maximum crash time 0 තියෙනවා අපි මේ කපලා දැම්මා. ඊළඟට අපි බලන්නේ cost slope එක. ඒක එතකොට cost slope එක බලනකොට minimum cost slope එක තිබ්බේ D එකට හින්දා අපි D activity එක crash කරනවා. හරිද? එතකොට maximum crash time එක D activity එකට තියෙනවා 4ක්. So we can crash the D activity by 4 days. But we are not going to crash the D activity by 4 days because if you see these three paths, දැන් අපි D activity එක තියෙන්නේ පුතේ මේ path එකේ විතරයි. අනිත් path වලට D activity එක නැහැ. අනිත් path දෙකටම D activity එක නැහැ. ඒකින්ද අපි crash කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ D activity එක 4කින්ම. හරිද? ඒකින්ද we are only going to crash the D activity by 1 day. දැන් අපි හිතුවා D activity එක මේ path 3ටම තිබ්බයි කියලා. එහෙනම් අපිට D activity එක කෙලින්ම 4කටම crash කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි මේ D activity එක මේ path එකට විතරක් තියෙන හින්දා අපි ඒක crash කරනවා එක day එකකින් විතරක්. So please make sure to make a note on all of the things that I am explaining for you, right? So when you are doing your example 2, 3 and 4, you will take like those questions, right? Then we are going to crash D activity by 1 day. That means the D activity 4 should be cut and make it as 3, right? So crash D by 1 day. So crashing D by 1 day means D is having only for this path, right? So crash D by 1 day means you have to cut the 11 and make it as 10. So after making it as 10, this path duration now become what? 23, right? So the total I have forgot to mention, when we are crashing activity A by 1 day, the total duration, the critical path is become 24, this path, right? So for that 24 days, total duration is 24 days. And cost, so we now know we are having a 450 cost. For that 450 cost, after crashing activity A by 1 day, we are having a cost of 20. That means for that previously we have 450. For that 450, you have to add this 20 here, right? You have to add this 20 here. That means our cost is 470. Oh, D එක මම පස්සේ කියන්න. දැන් cost slope එක 20 add කරනවා මෙතෙන්ට. එතකොට 400 plus 20 470. So now we have find out the D activity is still this path is the critical path. So after finding out still this is the critical path, we have decided to crash the deactivity by 1 day because the දැන් මේ deactivity එක තියෙන පුතේ මේ path එකට විතරයිනේ. අපි ඒකෙන්ද හතරකින්ම crash කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි මේ deactivity එක හැම path එකකටම තිබ්බනම් තියෙන හැම දැන් අපේ project network එකේ මෙතන 3ක් තිබ්බට සමහර project network එක වල 3ට වඩා තියෙනවනේ path. එතකොට හැම path එකකම D තිබුණා නම් අපිට තියෙන maximum crash time එකෙන්ම crash කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි මෙතන D activity එකක විතරක් තියෙන හින්දා අපි crash කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ හතරෙන්ම. හින්දා අපි එකකින් crash කරනවා. Right? So did you get that, Manisha and Vatsala? හැම පාත් එකම තිබ්බොත් තමයි අපි ඒ සම්පූර්ණ ප්‍රමාණයෙන් අඩු කරන්නේ. නැත්නම් එක පාත් එක හරි දෙකක හරි දැන් අපි හිතමුකෝ 3ක් තියෙන පාත් එකේ දෙකක විතරයි මේ D activity එක තියෙන්නේ. එහෙම වුණොත් අපි හතරකින්ම crash කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. Manisha and Vatsala, did you get that? Right. So crash D by 1 day. We have crashed the D activity by 1 day and the total duration is how much now? It is 23. So crash D by 1 day and the total duration is 23 days. So please make sure to write down this thing, right? දැන් අපි මේ crash කරන ඒවා cost එක duration දැන් crash කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ activity එක. මෙන්න මෙච්චර duration එකක් ගන්නවා. ඒවා හැම එකක්ම ලියන්න ඕනේ. හරිද? So after crashing D activity by 1 day, what is the total duration or the longest path that we are taking? තාම longest duration එක වෙන්නේ කීයද? 23. මේ 22 23 23 තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් total duration එක 23. The cost, how we are going to calculate the cost? So for the first one, we have calculated it as 470, right? 470, right? අපි දැන් crash activity එක crash කරාම එක day එකකින් 470 කියලා හොයාගත්තනේ. එහෙනම් ඒ 470 වලට you have to now add the cost slope of D. It is 25. So for that 470, you have to add this 25. That means 495 is the total cost now, right? So did you all get this up to now? Right. So now also you have to see what are the paths we are having as a critical path. So can you tell me what are the paths of the critical path among these three paths? A, C, F, G, A, D, F, G. Very good. So we are having now two critical paths. දැන් පුතේ බැලුවම 22, 23, 23 තියෙනවා. හරිද? ඒකට longest durations තියෙන්නේ මේ මෙතන 22, 23, 23. හරිද? තේරෙනව නේද? දැන් මේ මම මේ වෙන කලර් එකකින් තිබ්බට ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේ 24 එකත් දැන් කපලා තියෙන්නේ පුතේ. හරිද? 24 එකත් කපලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට 23 තියෙනවා. එතකොට අපි බැලුවම 22, 23, 23 තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේ අතරින් අපි බැලුවම critical path දෙකක් තියෙනවා. ACFG, ADFG. Then now I am going to highlight that critical path. ACFG, ACFG, ADFG, right? So these are the critical paths. So now we have already cut it down, the activity A and activity G. Now we are having what? Now we are having C, D, F. දැන් අපිට C, D, F activity තුන තියෙනවා නේ. එතකොට අපි බලනවා මොන activity එකද අපි crash කරන්න යන්නේ. So if we are going to see this two paths, activity A is already cross, activity G is already cross, and activity F is common. Activity F is common for both this path, and the cost slope is 30 for the activity F. And C and D is there. For the C, we have to incur a cost slope of 30. For the D, we have to incur a cost of 25. So if we are going to separately crash this activity C and D both, that means the cost of these two C and D is totaling up to 55. The sum is 55. But the cost is higher for that 55 is higher. We can simply crash the activity F. Activity F එකේ cost slope එක කීයද පුතේ 30යි. දැන් අපි ඊළඟට කරන්නේ මොකද්ද? activity ඔක්කොගෙම කියන්නේ අපි දැන් හොයාගත්තා critical paths ටික මොනවද කියලා. ඊපස්සේ critical paths ටික අපි highlight කරා. activity A, G already cost කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒවා crash කරන්න බෑ. ඊට පස්සේ බැලුවම F activity එක common තියෙනවා. common තියෙනවා දෙකේම. ඒ කියන්නේ path දෙකේම F activity එක තියෙනවා. cost එකත් වෙන්නේ 30යි. එහෙම කරන්න නැතුව අපි C වෙනම crash කරලා D වෙනම crash කරන්න ගියොත් C එකට cost එක 30යි, D එකට cost එක 25යි. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ දෙකේ total එකම අපිට add වෙන ඕනේ total cost එක විදියට. ඒ කියන්නේ 55ක් add වෙනවා. But it is better to get the F activity because F activity is having a lowest cost slope. So now after finding the lowest cost slope, I have to see how much of maximum crash time is there. So for the F activity, maximum crash time is 1. That means we can crash F activity by 1 day. So did you get that how to find the crash activity among this activity which we are remaining? ඒක තේරුණාද කොහොමද F activity එක ගන්න කියලා? මොනවා හරි මේ පැහැදිලි තැනක් තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න පුතේ. මොකද මේ හැම එකක්ම දැන් ඔන්න අපි මුලින්ම critical path activities ටික highlight කරා. highlight කරාට පස්සේ අපි දැක්කා activity A එකයි G එකයි අපි already කපලා තියෙන්නේ. කියන්නේ ඒ දෙක අපිට crash කරන්න බෑ. හැබැයි පුතේ මේ path දෙක ඔයගොල්ලෝ බැලුවම ඔයගොල්ලන්ට පේනව නේද commonව තියෙනවා F activity එක. මුලින්ම අපි බලනවා commonව තියෙන F activity එක. හරිද? එතකොට commonව තියෙන F activity එක ගත්තම ඒකේ අපි බලනවා cost slope එක කීයද? cost slope එක 30ක් තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ අපි බලනවා C activity එකයි D activity එකක් තියෙනවා. අපි වෙනමම C activity එක crash කරනවා මේ path එකේ, D activity එක crash කරනවා මේ path එකේ. එහෙම කියලා ගත්තොත් පුතේ අපිට මේ දෙකටම යන cost එක ගන්න වෙනවා. දැන් C activity එකට cost slope එක 30යි, D activity එකට cost slope එක 25. So that means ඔයා කියන්නේ මේ දෙකේම එකතුව ගන්න ඕනේ. So it is totaling up to 55. දැන් මේ දෙකම අපි වෙන වෙනම crash කරන්න ගියොත් මේ පළවෙනි path එකේ C එක crash කරනවා, දෙවෙනි path එකේ D එක crash කරන්න ගියාම අපිට cost එකක් එනවා පුතේ 30යි 25යි. ඒ කියන්නේ 55ක cost එකක් එනවා. හැබැයි මේ commonlyම තිබ්බ F activity එක අපි crash කරන්න ගියොත් අපිට කීයද එන්නේ cost එක? 30යි. දැන් අපි බලන්න ඕනේ අපේ project duration එක අඩු කරන්න අඩුම cost එකෙන්. එතකොට අර 55 cost එක 30යි 25යි ඒ දෙකේ summation එක අරගෙන 55 cost එකට වඩා F activity එකේ 30 දෙකටම common තියෙන F activity එකේ 31 ගන්න එක නේද cost effective. ඒකින්ද අපි F activity එක crash කරනවා. So Manisha, are you clear? Right. So likewise, if you are not clearing about what I am explaining, please ask because I am telling that thing because this question is connected each other, right? If you are not getting 1 point mean, you will going to miss this out, right? So now I am going to crash the activity F by 1 day. So you have to cross this 1 and make it as 0. So I will get another color for that. I will take this color is similar now. I will take green, right? So that means after crashing F activity by 1 day means F activity is also now we cannot crash further. So F activity is also we can now cross it, right? So the next one is crash F by 1 day. Crash F by 1 day. So we are now going to crash F by 1 day. So F is here. So crash F by 1 day means it should be 4. So I will make it as green here. So you have to cross this 5 and make it as 4, right? So I am coloring this, right? So after reducing the F activity by 1 day, what is the total duration you are getting here for the ACFG? It should be 22, right? So the 22 is here. And this, the second part ADFG is also 22. Right? Then me 22 වෙනකම් හොයාගත්තද? Crash F by 1 day. That means the total duration. So what is the total duration? Now can you see what is the critical path after reducing F activity by 1 day? What is the critical path? All these 3 paths now become the critical path because all these 3 paths are now having 22. That means after crashing F by 1 day, total duration now become 22 days, right? So how much of cost we are having? So cost we are previously have 495. For that 495, after crashing F activity by 1 day, we know the cost is 30. For that 495, you have to add this 30 here. So after adding 30, what is the value you are getting? 525. Very good. 490 plus 495. Sorry, 495 plus 30 means 525 is the cost now. Right? Are you all clear up to this point? Then පුතේ total duration හෙව්වම path 3ම 22 වෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ path 3ම දැන් critical path වෙලා ඉවරයි. So the total duration is 22 days. And for the cost, you have to take the previous cost. For that previous cost, you have to add the cost slope of F. So it is 30. That means the cost is now 525. So are you all get this point up to now? මෙතෙන්ට වෙනකන් තේරුණාද? So then අපිට මොකද්ද? All these 3 paths now become the critical path, right? All these 3 paths now become the critical path. So we have to highlight that critical path, right? We have to highlight this critical path now. A, B, E, G. A, B, A, B, E, G. G is already crossed, right? A, C, F, G. A, D, F, G. So all this now become the critical path. And now we know we have already cut this A, F, G. Then අපි A, F, G කියන activities ඔක්කොම දැනටම කපලා තියෙන්නේ පොතේ. හරිද? කින්ද අපි ඒව consider කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ අපි බලන්න ඕනේ අපිට මේ ඉතුරුලා තියෙන B, C, D, E වලින් B, C, D, E වලින් මොනවද අපි ගන්නෙ කියලා. හරිද? මොනවද අපි ගන්න යන්නේ? අපි බලන්න ඕනේ lowest cost එකම තියෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? ඔයගොල්ලෝ කියන්න බලන්න මොකද්ද අපි ගන්න යන්නේ කියලා. දැන් අපි මේ තුන බැලුවොත් A එක කපලා තියෙන්නේ. F එකත් කපලා G එකත් කපලා. right? එතකොට අපිට ඉතුරු වෙනවා B, C, D, E. නේ? ඔය ටිකනේ තියෙන්නේ. මේ පාත් දෙකෙන් නම් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම C සහ D ගන්න වෙනවා. C සහ D ගන්න වෙනවා මේ පාත් දෙකෙන්. අපි බලන්න ඕනේ දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මෙතන පේනව නේද පුතේ? මේ පාත් තුනෙන් අපි A කපලා තියෙන්නේ. G කපලා තියෙන්නේ. F එකත් කපලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට අපිට ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ මේ පාත් දෙකෙන් නම් C සහ D විතරයි. එහෙනම් අපිට මොන දේ කරත් C සහ D activity එක crash කරන්නම වෙනවා. එතකොට C සහ D activity crash කරන්න උනාම C එක බලනවා එකක් තියෙනවා පුළුවන්. D එකත් පුළුවන් තුනක් තියෙනවා. එහෙනම් C සහ D crash කරන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් මේ පාත් එක ගත්තොත් A කපලා G කපලා තියෙන්නේ. එතන B සහ E තියෙනවා. B සහ E වලින් අපි මොකද්ද select කරන්නේ? Among B and E, what is the activity you are going to select? So I have told you, when you are selecting the activity, you have to consider the minimum cost law. So among B and E activity, which activity you are going to select? Very good. It should be E activity. So among B is having 40, E is having 30. So you have to take the minimum cost lob. So the minimum cost lob is having E activity. Very good. Right? Did you all get this? How we are going to take this among B and E? How we are going to select the E activity? හැමෝටම තේරුණාද? So now we are going to crash. What? Crash CD. CD අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම crash කරන්න වෙනවා මේකේ. මේ පාත් දෙකේ ඉතුරුලා තියෙන CD විතරයි. ඒකින්ද crash කරන්න වෙනවා අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම C එක. Crash C, crash C, D, and among B and E. මේ පාත් එකේ B and E දෙකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකින්ද අපි බලනවා minimum cost එක තියෙන්නේ මොකටද කියලා. minimum cost එක තියෙන්නේ අපිට තේරුණා E එකේ කියලා 40යි 30යි අතර කියන්නේ E එකේ minimum cost එක තියෙන්නේ. So we are crashing C, D and E activity tree together. We are crashing C, D, E activity together by one day. Right? මේ activity තුනම අපි one day එකකින් crash කරනවා. එතකොට C activity එක crash by one day means C activity is now 0. You have to cut 1 and make it as 0, right? So after making it as 0, I have make it as 0. That means C activity is also now cannot be crash further. So C activity is crash. D activity, we have to crash by one day. That means it should be what? Tree should be 2 here. 2 here. We are having 2 more days to crash the D activity. And another one is E activity. So activity E is also going to crash by one day means you have to cross the 2 and make it as 1. Right? So now we are going to crash C, D, E together. So we are crashing C here. We are making 10 into 9. We are crashing C here means you have to make it as 9. That means the total duration should be what? 21. right? So the total duration should be 21 here. So we have crash C. Now we are going to crash D. So that means 10 cut, make it as 9. So the total duration should be how much? Now 21. And we have crash now CD, right? And you have to crash the E as well. E, we are having 8 normal time. So make it as when we are crashing 1 day means it should be 7. So the total duration for that path also 21. Right? So crash CDE together by 1 day. After crashing CDE by together 1 day, what is the total duration we are having? All these 3 paths now critical. That means 21 days we are having. So now we are going to calculate the cost. We are previously have the cost of 525. For that 525, you have to add the cost of C. For the cost of F, we are having 30. You have to add that. You have to add 30 here. F cost. CDF, no? Sorry. I am making mistake. Why don't you tell me? CDE. CDE. You have to add this 3. 30, 25, 30. 30, 25, 30. So after adding this cost together, what is the value you are getting? What is the value? දැන් අපි පුතේ කලින් එකේ cost එක 525. ඒ cost එකට අපි crash කරපු CDE තුනේම cost එක එකතු කරන්න ඕනේ. CDE තුනේම cost එක එකතු කරාම ඊයක් එනවද? Very good. 610ක්. So the total cost is 610 now, right? So still we are having what? Still we are having this 3 path, right? That means we are having this 3 path as critical path. So we have to see now whether we are having paths to be crossed. දැන් අපි මෙතන මේ තුනම තමයි තාම critical path තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් මේ path තුනෙන්ම අපි තව duration අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා බලනවා. හරිද? එතකොට මෙතන A කැපිලා තියෙනවා. Already we have cut A, G already cut, and F is already cut. Now we have cut C as well. දැන් අපි බැලුවම පුතේ C එකත් කපලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි path තුනෙන්ම කපන්න ඕනේ. We want to cut we have to cut by using all these 3 paths, right? So if I take the similar path, we have to take the activity from each and every path. So we have to take C, D and E, right? So if you take now the second path, A is also cut, C is also cut, F also cut, and G is also cut. දැන් පුතේ බැලුවම මේ path තුනම critical path වෙලා ඉවරයි. හැබැයි අපි බැලුවම දැන් තවදුරටත් අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා මේ paths වලින් බැලුවම පුතේ ACFG කියන path එකේ එකක්වත් cut කරන්න බෑ. ඒ ඔක්කොම activity අපි cut කරලා ඉවරයි. ඒ කියන්නේ reduce කරලා ඉවරයි පුළුවන් උපරිමේම. ඒ කියන්නේ තව දුරටත්. That means we cannot crash this project duration further. දැන් අපි crash කරනවා නම් අනිවාර්යෙන්ම මේ මොකද්ද critical path activity බලලා තමයි crash කරන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට මේ තුනම critical path වෙනවා. එතකොට critical path එකකින් හැම path එකකම activity එකක් crash වෙන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි බැලුවම අපි මේ second path එකේ එක activity එකක්වත් crash කරන්න බෑ. ඒ ඔක්කොම activity අපි cross කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ඔක්කොම activity crash කරලා ඉවරයි. That means this is the minimum time that we can crash. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ time එක තමයි පුතේ අපිට පුළුවන් උපරිම 21 තමයි පුළුවන් උපරිම දක්වා crash කරන්න පුළුවන් time එක. Right? So now I am going to make a very small thing for you. right? So I am writing down the project duration. Then තේරුණාද අපිට තවදුරටත් මේක crash කරන්න බැහැයි කියන එකට හේතුව? ඒක තේරුණාද? ඔයගොල්ලෝ අඳුන ගන්න ඕනේ මේ activity මේ path තුනම තමයි දැන් critical path උනේ. මේ path තුනම critical path තුනම අපි බලනවා අපිට මොන activity එකද crash කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඊට පස්සේ බැලුවම ACFG කියන path එක ගත්තම ඒකේ ඔක්කොම activities අපි මේ ඒ කියන්නේ crash කරලා පුළුවන් උපරිමයෙන්ම crash කරලා ඒ activity ටික ඉවර වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ path එකේ අපිට activity තව දුරටත් crash කරන්න බෑ. මේ path එකේ activity තව දුරටත් crash කරන්න බැරි හින්දා අපි අනිත් path දෙකේ විතරක් crash කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද මේ path තුනම අපිට critical path වෙලා ඉවරයි. ඒකින්ද අර path දෙකේ විතරක් crash කරන්න බෑ අපිට activity. So that's why we have now stop our crashing the project duration, right? So did you get that point? ඇයි අපි crash කරන එක නැවතුවේ කියන එක තේරුණාද? දැන් පුතේ මනිෂා කියනවා ආයෙ පොඩ්ඩක් කියනලු. ඒකින්ද මම මේ explain කරන්න. හොඳේ. දැන් අපි total duration එක calculate කරාම 21 කියලා ආවනේ. That means all these three parts are now critical. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ parts තුනම critical path වෙනවා. ඒක තේරුණාද මනිෂා? Right. So this මේ three parts තුනම දැන් critical path තුනක්. දැන් parts තුනම critical path වෙනකොට අපි කලින් එකෙත් බැලුවා හැම path එකකම අපිට crash කරන්න වෙනවා අනිවාර්යෙන්ම. එතකොට අපි choose කරා C, D සහ E ගන්නවා. B, E අතරින් lowest cost එක තියෙන E එක හින්දා අපි E එක crash කරා. ඒකින්ද C, D, E ගත්තා. දැන් පුතේ අපි බැලුවම මේ parts තුනෙන්ම A කපලා තියෙනවා, C කපලා තියෙනවා, F කපලා තියෙනවා, G කපලා තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ path එකේ ඔක්කොම activities ටික crash කරලා ඉවරයි දැනටම. A, C, F, G ඔක්කොම path activities ටික කපලා ඉවරයි. That means we cannot crash this path further. දැන් මේ A, C, F, G එකේ ඔක්කොම activities ටික කපලා ඉවරයි කියන්නේ මේ path එකේ තව දුරටත් crash කරන්න බෑ. දැන් මේ path තුනම critical path තුනා කියන්නේ පුතේ අපි මොකක් හරි දෙයක් කරනවා නම් ඒක path තුනටම කරන්න ඕනේ. මොකද path තුනම critical path වෙලා ඉවරයි. හැබැයි මේ path එකට තව දුරටත් crash කරන්න මොකුත් activity එකක් නැහැයි කියන්නේ අපිට තව දුරටත් මේ project network එක crash කරන්න බෑ. That's why we are stopping the reducing the project duration from here. ඒකින්ද මේ එක path එකක අපිට crash කරන්න තව දුරටත් activity එකක් නැති හින්දා අනිත් path දෙකේ විතරක් crash කරන එක කරන්න බෑ. මොකද මේ path තුනම critical path වෙලා ඉවරයි. ඒක හින්දා අපි මෙතනින් project duration එක reduce කරන එක නවත්තනවා. So Manisha, did you get that? තේරුණාද පුතේ? Right. So now we have stopped the reducing the project duration, right? So now I am putting the project duration here. Direct cost is here. And indirect cost. So in here you have to assume the indirect cost. I will give you indirect cost. So you have to assume that indirect cost, right? And total cost, right? So project duration is starting from 25 days, right? Project duration is starting from 25 days. From that 25 days, direct cost is how much? 450, right? So you have to assume this indirect cost. I will give you this indirect cost as 400. So you have to assume that thing, right? So in the examination paper, you will be getting the indirect cost. So for the example number 4, I will give you If the indirect cost per week is 200 and additional 500. So likewise, you will get the indirect cost. But for the example number 1, you have to assume it as at the project duration of 25, indirect cost is 400. So you have to take the summation of direct and indirect cost, and you can get this amount as total cost. Total cost is 850. So when the project duration crash by 1 day, the total project duration is 24. For that 24, direct cost is how much? Direct cost එක ක්‍රියාද 24 එකට. මේ මෙතන අපි calculate කරපුවා බලලා තමයි මේ ගන්නෙ. For the total duration of 24, the cost is 470. 470. For that 470, you have, I will give you this, you have to assume this indirect cost, right? So you have to take the summation here, right? 820. For the project duration of 23, the direct cost is 495 and the indirect cost you have to assume it as 300. Therefore, the total cost is 795. For the project duration of 22 days, the direct cost is 525 and you have to assume this indirect cost as 250. Therefore, the total cost is 775. And the next one is the last one, CDE together, 21 days. So the direct cost is how much? 610. And you have to assume that the indirect cost are 200. Therefore, it is 820. So up to this point, we are crashing. Now, indirect cost එක පුතේ මම මේ indirect cost එක change වෙනවා. Indirect cost is going to be changed, right? Fixed එකක් නෙමෙයි එන්නේ. Then, can you see that when the project duration is reducing, the total direct cost is going to be increased. Project duration එක අඩු වෙනකොට පුතේ direct cost එක වැඩි වෙනවා කියලා පේනවද ඔයගොල්ලන්ට? ඒ කියන්නේ we want to finish our project as much as possible. We want to finish our project by reducing the project duration. When we are wanting to finish off our project as much as possible by taking lesser number of days, means we have to hire more laborers. When we are hiring more labor, our direct cost is going to be increased. If we take the project indirect cost එකේදී වෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? When we are reducing our project duration, our indirect cost is going to be reduced because the cost which is going for the supervision, administration, all are going to be reduced because we are using lesser number of days, right? මම මේක කිව්වා project duration එක අඩු වෙන direct cost එක වැඩි වෙනවා. හැබැයි indirect cost එක අඩු වෙනවා. මොකද supervisors ලට administration වලට අපි කියවන indirect cost එක අඩු වෙනවා දවස් ගාන අඩු වෙනකොට. So I have told you using the presentation. The presentation I have done for the reducing project duration. So in that presentation, if you are going through that presentation again, you can see this kind of relationship, right? So after writing down this project duration, direct cost, indirect cost, and total cost, in here, you have to say what is the optimum duration that you have to select. If I am asking you to select the optimum duration for this project, what is the duration you are going to select? දැන් මම අහුවත් පුතේ optimum duration එක select කරන්න කියලා. ඔයා මොන duration එකද select කරන්නේ? Very good. It should be minimum cost. Optimum duration means you have to select the minimum cost, right? So optimum means you have to select the minimum cost where the total cost is minimum. So where is the place the total cost is minimum among this? Total cost is minimum at, very good. Total cost is minimum at 775. So this is the optimum project duration time. Make a tamai optimum project duration time. Very good. It should be 22 days. So the optimum project duration time is where the total cost is minimized, right? So you have to make a note, right? If I ask you a question at the examination, find out the optimum project duration. That means you have to find out the total cost at the minimum, right? So optimum project duration point is where the total cost is minimum. So optimum project duration for this project is equal to 22 days, right? So in the I can ask another question, right? In that question, I am telling you to reduce the project duration as much as possible, right? So the first type of question that I can ask you to, I can ask what is the optimum project duration. The second type of question that I can ask is you have to reduce your project duration as much as possible. So what is the time that you can crash or reduce the project duration as much as possible? Reduce the project duration, reduce the project duration or crash the project duration as much as possible. So what is the days that you can crash the project duration as much as possible? Sachini, it is not 23 days. දැන් මං කියනවා ඔයාට project duration එක පුළුවන් තරම්ම අඩු කරලා ඒ time එක මට කියන්න කියලා. දැන් අපි project duration එක පුළුවන් තරම්ම අඩු කරලා නේද පුතේ මේ තියෙන්නේ. එතනින් එහාට අපිට project duration එක තව දුරටත් අඩු කරන්න බෑ. So reduce the project duration or crash as much as possible means we can crash that project up to 21 days. Very good, very good. So I think you have get the point, right? So when after drawing like this question, I can ask this kind of two questions from you. Find the optimum project duration, it is 25. Reduce project duration as much as possible means it is 21 days. So are you all clear about this question? ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මොනවා හරි අපහැදිලි තැනක් තියෙනවා නම් දැම්ම අහන්න. ඔයගොල්ලෝ සයිලන්ට් හින්දා මං හිතනවා question එකක් නැහැ කියලා. පැහැදිලිද ඔක්කොම මෙතෙන්ට වෙනකන්? සයිලන්ට් එකේ ඉන්නේ මොකද? So shall we move to the second question now? අපි එහෙනම් second question එකට යමු. හරිද? Second question එකේ right. So in the second question, please write down this second question, right? So first we have to find out what? First we have to draw this project network. Now you can take some time and write down this question. Or taking, do you need to write down this question? Right. Please write down this question. And until you are writing down this question, it is better to draw the project. So when you are, after you have finished off writing down this question, please let me know. So are you all finished writing down this example? Example එක ලියාගෙන ඉවරද? ඇයි පුතේ මේ ළමයි participate වෙන rate එක අඩු? Right, right. So have you all finished writing down this example? ඉවරද ලියාගෙන? I am not asking you to working out this example. I am right. Okay. So after writing down this example, you have to calculate the maximum crash time, right? So how you are going to calculate the maximum crash time? From normal time, you have to deduct the crash time, right? So that is the maximum crash time. So likewise, from the normal time, deduct crash time, take the maximum crash time. So the cost slope you can calculate by getting the crash cost. From the crash cost, you have to deduct the normal cost and take divided it by the maximum crash time. So please make sure, please calculate this maximum crash time and cost slope immediately. මේ ටික calculate කරන්නක පුතේ. So after calculating this maximum crash time and cost slope, please let me know. Right. So as the next step, you have to draw the project network, right? අපි ඊළඟ step එක විදිහට මොකද කරන්නේ? Project network එක draw කරන එක. හරිද? I am suggesting you to use the activity on node approach, right? So you have to use activity on node approach, activity on node approach, right? When you have to use the activity on node approach, you have to use circle as the node and activity on arrow approach. Please use activity on arrow approach to draw the project network. So when you are drawing the activity on arrow approach, you have to use your node as circle and use the arrow for the activity. Then activity on arrow approach එක යොදා ගන්නවා නම් පුතේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම circle එකක් යොදා ගන්න ඕනේ. arrow එකකට තමයි අපි activity එකක් කියන්නේ. හැබැයි මම මෙතන Excel එක use කරන හින්දා මම කොටුවකින් එක පෙන්නනවා. Right? So I will take like this one. Right? So can you see for the activity A, there is no any predecessors. So that means I can start this activity A, right? So I am drawing this project network. Please make sure that you are also drawing. This is for the activity A. Activity A, there is no any predecessor. For the activity B also, there is no any predecessors. That means we can start from here. This is, I will denote it as 1, right? This is second one, and this is third one, and this is for the activity B. This arrow is drawn for the activity B. Right. And activity A. Activity A, so when we are getting the time and cost, you have to take what? Normal cost and time, right? For the normal time for the activity A is 20. Right? For the B activity, it is 25. Right. So we have now done up to this. So for the activity C, predecessor is activity A. That means you have to start that from here. For the activity C, predecessor is activity A. So C activity is here and C activity normal time is 10, right? This should be 4. And for the D activity is also what? For the D activity also, A activity is the predecessor. That means we have to start this from here. Right? This is, so this is for the D activity. D activity and the normal time is what? 12. And I have done for the D activity. So next one is E activity. For the E activity, predecessors are B and C. For the E activity, B and C are the predecessors. B and C are the predecessors. So it is better to put this D activity in the next path. It is better to get this C activity here, right? So D activity. D activity එක අපි පුතේ මේ පැත්තෙන් අඳිමු. හොඳයි. For the D activity, predecessor is A. For the D activity, predecessor is A and normal time is 12. Right, so I have done D activity. So for the E activity, B and C is the predecessor. B and C is the predecessor. So it is better to take B and C. We can take both this together, right? Instead of getting this thing, for the B and C, we can make it as this, right? For the B and C. For the B and for the C, right? This is 3 and this is 4. For the B and C, after completing both B and C, we can start to do the E activity. We can start to do the E activity, right? We can start to do the E activity, and E activity normal time is 5. Again, D and E, predecessors for the F activity, D and E are the predecessors. That means this thing can be taken from here. For D and E, for the D and E, after completing D and E both, after completing D and E both, after completing D and E both, you can start to do the F activity, right? Do the F activity, and F activity normal time is 10. So we have now drawn the project network. So have you all completed up to this point? Drawing the project network. Project network එකේ ඉවරද? So I am telling you to get the activity on arrow approach. So please make sure instead of drawing boxes here, you have to draw circle, right? So in the examination, if I ask you to draw activity on arrow approach, please make sure to use circle, right? Now I'm going to fill this thing and find out the critical path, right? So this is 0 here. For that 0, I have to add 20. That means this is 20. So make sure to find, please make sure forward pass calculation and backward pass calculation and find out the critical path. So for that 20, adding the 10 means 30 here. For that 30, I have 535. 32, that means it should be 35, 45, 45, 35, 30, 35 minus 12, 30 minus 10 is 20, 35 minus 12, 35, it should be 20 here. So I am typing the normal time here, normal time, and for the A, B, C, D, E, F activity, right? For the normal time, what are the normal time for the A activity? 20, 25, 20, 25. No, now I'm writing the normal time here, right? 10, 12, 5, and 10. හරිද? Now I have write down the normal time for each of these activity, and now I'm going to find out what is the total duration. Total duration. So now you have to find out what are the paths for this project network, right? So I am writing down the path A, D, F. A, D, F. First path A, D, F. The second path is A, C, E, F. A, C, E, A, C, E, and F. So the third path is B. Third path is B, E, and F. E and F. So these are the three parts according to this project network. So I am writing down the normal time and calculating the total duration here. 20, 12, 10. For the A, 20, C10, E5, F10. For the B, 25, E5, and F10. So after writing down all this duration, you can take the summation of each of these critical path. So I'm getting the summation here. It is 42 for the first and 45 and 40. So check whether you are getting this value. Yes. Have you all completed up to this point? හැමෝම මෙතෙන්ට වෙනකම් කරාද? Yes. So Diane has finished up to this point. What about others? Ayesha? Your name is Nona. 5703. Finish. Kavindi is also finished. Manisha, okay. Finish. Right. So we have now calculate the total duration. So after calculating the total duration, what is the next thing? You have to find out the critical path. So the critical path means the longest duration path. This is the longest duration path. A, C, E, F. So now I am going to highlight those longest duration path. A, C, E, F, right? A, C, E, and F. So I am going to highlight A, C, E, and F critical path. Right. So after highlighting A, C, E, F critical path, we have to see what is the activity that we are going to crash first. Right? So what is the activity that you are going to crash first? So according to this question, you have to find the optimum project duration and reduce the project duration as much as possible, right? And not assume indirect cost. You have to assume the indirect cost as well, right? So firstly, you have to see after highlighting critical path, firstly, you have to see whether the maximum crash time is 0 in critical path activity. So critical path activity all are having more than 0. That means we can crash any of these activity. So the next one is find out the lesser cost slope. So what is having the lesser cost slope according to this project network? According to this critical path. Huh? We can crash all this activity because there is no any very good. Ayesha is telling A and E both. A and E වලට දෙකටම තියෙනවා minimum cost slope එක. අපිට එතකොට දෙකම crash කරන්න බැහැනේ. So what is the next step that we are going to select? So we have say whether there are 0 maximum crash time. According to this project network and according to this critical path, there is no 0 crash time. That means we can crash all these activities. So please make some note on this, right? And then after we are seeing which activity is having the minimum cost slope. So the minimum cost slope is having for the activity A and for the activity E. So we cannot now crash both this activity A and E. Then cost slope එක අඩුවෙන්ම තියෙනවා activity A එකටයි activity E එකටයි. දෙකම හැබැයි crash කරන්න බෑ. So what is the next solution that we can go? So if we are having like this minimum slope for more than one activity, like this incident, if we are having cost slope for minimum cost slope for 2 or more activity. So the next step that you can go with, you have to get the lowest identification number. Then ඔයාට පුතේ cost slope එක minimum ගැලුවම A සහ E activity දෙකටම තියෙනවා cost slope එක minimum. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒ දෙකම අපිට reduce කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි දෙකම reduce කරන්න නැහැ අපි. ඊළඟ rule එක වෙන්නේ අපිට you have to find out the lowest identification number. So among this activity A and E, what is having the lowest identification number? So the identification number is starting from A. For the A, identification number is 1. For the B, 2, C, 3, D, 4 likewise. For the E, 5. So the lowest identification number is having for the A activity. Right, Ayesha and Rukshika is telling that A. Very good. So if you are having minimum cost slope as 400, we have to select one. So when we are selecting one means you have to get the lowest identification number. So the lowest identification number is having for the activity A. So now I'm going to crash activity A by 1 day. So now I'm going to crash activity A, right? So when I'm going to crash activity A, the maximum crash time is 3. පුතේ maximum crash time එක දැන් ඔන්න A activity එක select කරනවා කියන එක තේරුණාද හැමෝටම A සහ E activity එකෙන් A activity එක ගත්තයි කියන එක හැමෝටම තේරුණාද yes right දැන් අපි activity A එක select කරා ඊට පස්සේ activity A එකට it is having the maximum crash time of 3 so whether you are going to crash the activity A by 3 days or 1 day. Or activity A එක crash කරන්න යනවද පුතේ 3 days වලින්ම නැත්නම් 1 day එකකින් විතරක් crash කරනවා. Very good, Diane. We are going to crash, although we are having the maximum crash time of 3 here, we are going to crash activity A by 1 day because if we see the 3 parts, the one path is not having activity A. That means if we are reducing the activity A by 1 day, it is not good for the other part. දැන් පුතේ activity A එක අපි දවස් 3කින්ම crash කරන්න පුළුවන් වුණාට අපි parts 3 ගත්තම එක path එකක activity A එකක් නැහැ. ඒකින්ද අපි ඒක තුනකින්ම crash කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. Therefore, we are not going to crash activity A by 3 days. So, therefore, we are only crashing activity A by 1 day, right? So, did you get that point? Why we are not crashing activity A by 3 days? What is the reason behind that? ඇයි අපි crash කරන්න නැත්තේ activity A එක දවස් 3කින් කියන එක තේරුණාද? Right. So the first one is, first we have to write down what? Project duration. So project duration is how much? Project duration is 45 days. And cost, we have to find out the cost. We did not find the cost, right? So I will get the summation of what? I will get the summation of the normal cost. So the normal cost summation is 21,000. So the normal cost is 21. Cost is how much? Rupees 21,000. Right? So we have now decided to crash the activity A by 1 day, right? That means you have to cross this tree and make it as 2, right? So we are going to crash activity A by 1 day. So activity A by 1 day means it should be 19 here. Right? So when we are reducing activity A by 1 day means the total duration is 41 here and 44 here. Right? So so we have crash A by 1 day. So after crashing A by 1 day, what is the critical path? Still the critical path is same. It is ACEF. So now the days are 44 days. And how much of cost we are having? For the 21,000, you have to add what? The cost of the activity A, that is 400. 400, that means 21,400 is the cost now. Very good. So we have now done for the activity. We have crash activity A by 1 day. So still the critical path is ACEF. Still the critical path is ACEF because it is having the longest duration. So now we are going to see what is the activity we are now going to crash again. දැන් අපිට තාම ACEF තමයි තියෙන්නේ critical path එක විදියට. දැන් අපි ඊළඟට මොකද්ද crash කරන්න යන්නේ? ඊළඟටත් බැලුවම අපි බලන්න ඕනේ minimum cost slope එක. So you have to see the minimum cost slope. So the minimum cost slope. So please give me a minute. Aisha, the next one, so our critical path is still the same. So we have to now again see what is the activity that we are going to crash. දැන් අපි බැලුවම So in that activity also we have to see the minimum cost slope. So the minimum cost slope is having for the activity A and for the activity E. So, so I have told you when we are having more than one activity which is having a cost slope, you have to get the lowest identification number. So the lowest identification number among activity A and activity E, which is having the lowest identification number. මං කියවනේ පුතේ cost slope එක අඩුම ඒවා බලන්න කිව්වා. රුක්ෂිකා is telling it should be A. Lowest identification number එක තාම තියෙන්නේ activity A එකට. So activity A can be further reduced by 2 days. The activity A එක තව පුළුවන් දවස් දෙකකින් reduce කරන්න. So now I am going to crash the activity A by one more day again, right? So I will make it another color, purple, right? So activity A can be further reduced by 1 day. So crash A by 1 day, crash A by 1 day. So crashing A by 1 day means it should be 18 now. So crashing A by 1 day means it should be again 18 here, right? So the total duration here now is 40. I am doing and color it in purple, right? So in your paper you can just cross, right? 43. So when we are crashing activity A by 1 day, what is the critical path you are getting? Duration is 43. Still the critical path is ACEF. So the duration is 43 and the cost for the previous one is 21,400, and for that 21,400 you have to add this cost slope of 400 for the A activity. So add in the 400 here, that means 21,800 cost is there, right? 21,800 cost is there. Very good. Right. So again, our critical path is still ACEF. So again, you have to see what is the activity you are going to crash. ඊළඟටත් බලන්න ඕනේ මොන activity එකද crash කරන්න කියලා. So which is having the lowest cost slope. So the lowest cost slope is having by A and E. And when we are having A and E both, you have to take the lowest identification. That means you have to again take A. Very good. You have to take Ayesha. Very good. So you have to take A again. And you have to see the maximum crash time for the A activity is 1. So that means we can crash activity A by 1 more day, right? So I am going to crash activity A by 1 more day. When I'm going to crash activity A by 1 more day means further to that, we cannot crash activity A. That means you have to cut it out the activity A. So then අපි activity A එක තව එක day එකකින් මේ අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. So I will make it as 0. That means we cannot further crash the activity A, right? So therefore, I have cut the activity A here. So crash A by 1 day. So crash A by 1 day. This means it should be 17 here. So can you see I have made it as orange, right? So 17 here. So after crashing the activities, you have to find out the total duration. So the total duration here is 39. And here is 42. So so when we are crashing activity A by 1 day, what is the critical path? Still the critical path is ACEF. Crash A by 1 day means we are having 42 days, right? 42 days. So the cost should be 21,800. For that 21,800, you have to add this 400. So after adding this 400, how much your value getting? 21,800 adding 400. 22,200. Very good. So still the activity A is still this this is the critical path. ACEF is the critical path, right? So ACEF is the critical path, and we have now know the activity A is almost crash. We cannot reduce that activity A. That's why I have cut it down the activity A. So next one is you have to say what is having what? Which activity is having the lowest cost slope. So what is the activity that you are now going to crash, Puta? Very good. Rukshika, Ishara, Diane is telling E activity. So we are going to crash E activity. Very good. So we are going to crash E activity. So E activity is having 3, maximum crash time is 3. But can you see the E activity is not common for all these 3 projects, all these 3 path. දැන් මේ E activity එක පුතේ common activity එකක් නෙමෙයි මේ තුනටම. ADF එකේ E activity එක නෑ. ඒකින්ද අපිට crash කරන්න බෑ මේ maximum crash තුනෙම. So I will take only one, right? Crash E by 1 day. Crash E by 1 day. So crash E by 1 day means crash E by 1 day. So it should be 2 here. Crash E by 1 day. So I will make it another color, green, right? So crash E by 1 day means it should be 4. So the total duration should be 41. And here 40 minus 1 means 39. So crash E by 1 day, still the critical path is ACEF. So the crash E by 1 day, the total duration is 41 days. Right, 41 days. So the cost is what? Cost is for the 22,200, you have to add the activity E cost slope, it is 400. That means 22,600 is the cost. Right? So again we have to see. Again ACEF is the critical path. So which activity is having the minimum cost slope? Huh? Very good. E activity. So again, E activity is having the minimum cost slope. So I will go to crash the E activity by 1 day again. So we are having 2 days. So E activity crash by 1 day. Right? So crash activity E by 1 day. So it should be 3 here. Again 3 here. 49 should be now 40 here. And 39 should be 38. Right, so among that, so crash E by 1 day. By crashing E by 1 day, you can see still ACEF is the critical path. So we can make it as 40 days. And cost is how much? For the cost 22,600, you have to add E activity cost slope is 400. You have to add 400. That means the cost is 23,000 now. So still the ACEF is the critical path. So still ACEF is the critical path. So it is still minimum cost slope is having E, and E can be crashed by another 1 day. So it is now 0. When it is now 0 means what will happen? We cannot crash the E activity by more than this, right? Therefore, I have cut it down the E activity. So E activity is crashing by 1 more days means it should be 2 here now. And for here also, it should be 2. So crashing E by 1 more days means now it is 39 here. And for this, it is 37 here. So by seeing this, so crash E by 1 day. Crash E by 1 day. What is the path which is having a highest duration? ECEF 39, ADF 39. That means these two paths now become the critical path. So 39 days. And now I am going to calculate cost. Cost is 23,000 for the previous. For that cost, you have to add this 400 cost slope. That means 23,400 is the cost. Now we have find out ADF, ACEF. Both are critical path now because both are having 39. ADF, ADF. So D is also now critical path. Therefore, I have highlighted. And ACEF, the previous one, right? So what is the activity now you are going to crash? ඊළඟට මොන activity එකද crash කරන්න යන්නේ? These are the three paths. These are the activities now critical. So which activity you are going to crash now? Ayesha Sachin is telling F. Let's see. So A is out. A is out, right? E is also out. From 700, 500 and 600. So these are the two paths that we are having. A and E are cut. A and E are cut now. So we are having F activity. F activity and C and D. For the F activity, it is 600. F activity is common. And for the C and D, it is 700 and 500. දැන් අපි බැලුවම F activity එක මේ දෙකටම පුතේ common නේ. ඒකට යන cost එක කීයද? 600. හැබැයි CD වෙනමම අපි C එකයි D එකයි වෙනමම crash කරන්න ගියොත් ඒකට යනවා 700 plus 500 means 1200 sum, right? Therefore, it is better to crash F activity, right? Very good. So crash F activity. So you can crash F activity. We are having maximum crash time of 5. So let's see whether the F activity is common for all these three paths, right? So can you see F activity is common for three paths? දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට පේනවද පුතේ F activity එක common වෙලා තියෙනවා path තුනටම. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට crash කරන්න පුළුවන් F activity එක maximum limit. Crash by 5 days. So the maximum crash time is 5. So you can crash the F activity by 5 days because the F activity is common for all this part. So did you get my point? I crash කරන්නේ පහෙන්ම කියන එක තේරුණාද? Right. So crash F by 5 days. So crash F by 5 days. That means it should be 0 here. right? We are crashing F activity by 5 days. I cannot use colors, so I have used all these colors. So F activity is now, we have to cut. We are crashing F activity by 5 days, right? We have to cut F activity. 5 days means how much? From 10, you have to deduct it by 5 days means it should be 5. So 39 deducting 5 means 34 here, right? Crashing by 5 days. Crashing by 5 days, 39 means it is 38 here. $37 minus 5 means 32. So when we are crash activity F by 5 days, what is the critical path? 34, 38, 32. So the critical path is still is what? Sorry, I did not reduce it by 5, no? 39 minus 5 means it should be 34, right? So we are having 34, 34, 32. So very good, Dan. It should be 34. Thank you very much. So crash F by 5 days means it should be 34 days, right? It should, the critical path is 34 days. So the critical path is 34 days and cost is 23,400. For that 23,400, you have to add this 600. And this 600 is for the 1 day. We have now crashed for the 5 days. That means you have to take this 600, multiply it by the 5 days, right? So by adding this 23,400, for that you have to add 600 multiplied by the 5. That means your cost is how much? 26,400. 26,400 ආවද පුතේ? Why we are getting it as 600? You have to multiply it by 5 because we have crashed it by 5 days, right? Right. So we are still have this ADF, ACEF as the critical path. So let's see what is the activity now we can crash. So F is activity, F is also out now. So what is the activity now we can crash? So A is out, E is out, and F is out. That means among these two critical paths, C and D are the common, right? Both C and D you have to reduce. C එක තියෙන පුතේ first second එකේ second part එකේ, D එක තියෙන first එකේ. එහෙනම් both C and D you have to crash. So both C and D crashing can be done. So I am going to crash C and D both. So it is should be 1 here now. There is no any color to be used. So for one active, I am crashing one day, both from the C and D, right? Crash C, D by 1 day. Crash C and D by 1 day. Crash C, C means it should be 33. C and D by 1 day means 33 here. Right? That means crash C and D by 1 day. Still we are having these two paths as the critical path. So the project duration is 33 days. So cost we have to find. So the previous cost is 26,400. For that 26,400, you have to add this cost, C and D cost, 7,500. 700 and 500. 700 plus 500. So after adding, how much value you are getting? 27,600. Very good, 27,600. So can you see still ADF and ACEF are the critical path. So what is the, so we are having this C and D both, and we can crash C and D by another 1 day. දැන් අපිට මේ path දෙකමනේ පුතේ තාම තියෙන critical path එක විදියට. එහෙනම් A ඉවරයි, F ඉවරයි, E cut කරලා ඉවරයි. So we can crash C and D by another 1 day, right? So crashing C by another 1 day means it becomes now 0. That means we cannot crash C by further 1 day. We have to cross that. But D is crash in 1 day means it should be 4. Right? So we are going to crash C and D by 1 day. It should be 10 here. So it should be 32 here. Do you have a lecture after this? D here. No, right. So, right. D here, right? So I have reduced the D activity by 1 day. So it is 32. Reduce C activity by 1 day. It should be also 32. So can you tell me after crashing, crash C, D by 1 day, what is the value you are getting? 32. 32 is the value. 32 days, right? 32 days. Can you see all these three paths are now critical? So 32 days, and the previous cost is 27,600. For that 27,600, you have to add this 700 and 500. 700 plus 500. That means what is the value you are getting? 700 plus 500 means you are getting 28,800. Very good. 28,800 you are getting, right? Oh. You have to add 700 plus 500. You are getting 28,800, right? 28,800. So can you see? Now these three paths are become critical. 32, 32, 32. That means we have to highlight all these paths. Now they are critical. But can you see? Oh, I have done this for this, no? Should be 700. So can you see the C activity is now cut. We have cut, right? That activity cannot be crashed by further. That's why we have cut. So only we are having B and D. Only we are having activity B and D to crash. B and D are not common for the three paths. They make paths තුනම පුතේ critical paths උනා. ඊට පස්සේ දැන් අපි මේ අර කපපු නැති activity බැලුවම B and D විතරයි ඉතුරු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. So B and D is not common for the three paths. Ne? Yeah, Diane, very good. We cannot crash more. We cannot crash this. We cannot reduce or crash this project further. So this is the last one that we can crash. So did you all get that? දැන් අපිට crash කරන්න බෑ තව දුරට. Right? So I have mentioned that you have to find out the optimum project duration. So when you are finding out the optimum project duration, what you have to take? These are the things you have to take when you are finding out the optimum project duration. Right? Project duration is 45. At the 45, cost is 21 days. Right? So likewise, so indirect cost you have to assume. So please make it as a blank and fill this out. 44 for the 44 direct cost is 21,400. For the 43, what is the cost? 21,800. For the 42, what is the cost? 22,200. For the 41, it is 22,600. For the 40, it is 23,000. For the 39, it is 23,400. For the 34 days, I am here 34 days. For the 34 days, it is 26,400. For the 33 days, 27,600. For the 32 days, it is 28,800. So they are asking, you have to assume that we are not getting any indirect cost. So make it as blank, right? So the total direct cost become the total cost, right? So what is the optimum project duration? What is having the optimum project? So make it as blank here. Therefore, as a result of that, this direct cost become the total cost here, right? So what is the optimum project duration? Please answer me. Very good. So, so as we are not having any indirect cost, the optimum project duration means the cost which is having the minimum duration. That means 45 days. Very good. So, so we have answered for the find out optimum project duration. So the next one is reduce the project duration as much as possible. So we can reduce the project duration as much as possible. It means we can reduce up to 32 days, right? So I think all of you are now know how to calculate all of these things, right? So there are two other example for you, right? So in the second example, sorry, in the third example, in here, you are not given the crash time. Crash time and cost is not given. So you have to find out the crash time and cost. So I am explaining the question number 3 and 4 because you have to make do this question number 3 and 4 as your homework, right? So in the next class, I am just going through the steps that you have to follow. So please make sure to come to the next class after completing this example number 3 and 4. So I will upload this Excel sheet to the LMS, right? So in the example number 3, you are not given crash time and cost. So as a first step, you have to find out this crash time and cost, right? Then after, you can draw the project network, right? So in drawing the project network, I am asking you to use activity on node approach. You have to use activity on node approach. So when you are using activity on node approach means you have to use a box, right? So you have to use the activity on node approach and draw the project network, right? So you have to draw the project network using activity on node approach and find out the optimum project duration and reduce the project duration as much as possible. So please do this example number 3, right? So now I'm explaining example number 4. So example number 4 is little bit different, right? Can you see? There is a little bit difference, right? So the activities are make it as 1, 2, 2, 3. So they are not giving any activity A, B, C, D, E are not given. That means you have to use what? You have to use activity on arrow approach. You have to use activity on arrow approach. And you have to name the, when you, if you are getting 1, 2, 2, 3 like this, you have to name your activity. දැන් අපි පුතේ activity on arrow approach එකෙන් මම අඳින්න කිව්වම ඔයා මෙහෙම 1 2 2 3 එහෙම activities ගත්තොත් ඔයාට අනිවාර්යෙන්ම activities name කරන්න වෙනවා, right? So when you are naming your activity, please make sure to see your normal time. Please make sure to see your normal time, right? As a first step, you have to see your normal time. 3, 3, 7, 9, 5, 0, 6. Likewise, you are having. මං කිව්වා අපි project network එක බලනකොට normal time එකයි normal cost එකයි තමයි ගන්න ඕනේ. දැන් මේ වගේ එකක් ආවම ඔයා activities ටික නම් කරගන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට normal time එක බැලුවම can you see the normal time is 0 here. So what are the activities which is having a normal time of 0? Can you tell me the name that I have teach you? The activities which is having 0 time. What is the name we are calling for those activities? Can you remember the name? We have drawn some, it is starting from D. Can you remember the name? Which is having the normal time of 0. The time is becomes 0. Those are called as dummy activity. Can you remember? Dummy activity. The activities which is not having any time. So that means when the normal time is 0, it is a dummy activity. So therefore, for the dummy activity, we are not going to assign any of a letter, right? Therefore, you have to eliminate that thing, and the dummy activities, we are drawing it as a what you call කඩයිරක් වගේනේ අපි අඳින්නනේ dummy activity එක. So please do not assign a letter here. Therefore, I am assigning A for this, B for this, C for this, D for this, E for this, and for the F, it is a dummy activity. Therefore, I am not assigning a letter here, but you have to draw it using using what? අර කඩයිරකින් අඳින්න ඕනේ හැබැයි. හොඳයි dummy activity එක. Therefore, I ignore that. And F for this, G for this, F, G, H, I, and J, right? So I have assigned the activity for this, and you have to find out the maximum and crash time. You have to draw the activity on arrow project network, and you have to find the optimum project duration, right? In the finding optimum project duration, you are given 2 options. So the first option is given if the indirect cost per week is 200. Per week, the indirect cost is 200. That means that within the number of week, you have to multiply that. And after multiplying within the number of week, if you are having, I am having 5 weeks. So 200 multiplied by the 5 and add that 500 additional. So 200 per week, we are having 5 weeks, mean it is the value is 1000. For that 1000, you have to add 500 addition. So that is for the first option. The indirect cost එක මේ විදිහට දෙනවා 200යි week එකකට addition එක 500යි. එතකොට ඔයා weeks ගානෙන් 200 වැඩි කරලා addition 500 එකතු කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ first option එකේ. එතකොට ඔයා first option එකේ බලන්න ඕනේ optimum project duration එක කීයද. So the second option, the indirect cost is given as another value. So the indirect cost per week is 200. When we are having the indirect cost per week is 200, what is the value you are getting as indirect cost? And find out optimum project duration for the second option as well. And the next question is asking reduce the project duration as much as possible. And you have to tell this much of this much of week can be reduced for this project, right? Did you all get my point? So please make sure to work it out this example number 3 and 4. තේරුණා නේද පුතේ මං කියපුවා? Example number 3 එකයි 4 එකයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ හදලා එන්න ඕනේ සිකුරාදා එනකොට. Explain කරපු ටික තේරුණා නේද? මේවා මේ dummy activity ඒවා තේරුම් ගන්න නැතුව ඔයගොල්ලන්ට හදන්න බෑ. එහෙම හැදුවොත් වැරදෙනවා. ඒක තමයි මම explain කරේ. So ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරගෙන සිකුරාදාට කරගෙන එනවා නේද? Please make sure to do this homework and come, otherwise it is not will be a productive lecture for you, right? So thank you very much. I have taken 13 minutes more than from you, so thank you very much, and we will meet on Friday.